Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third session of the special edition of the KnowTalks 2023, live from the Abu Dhabi International Book Fair. In today's session, our distinguished guest speaker, Yazen Al Kodmani, the partner at 3Y Agtech and Deputy General Manager at the Emirates Bio Farm. Yazen will provide valuable insights into the challenges of achieving food security and the role played by new and innovative technologies. As well, he will be discussing the technological and research and development efforts shaping the future of agriculture. Before handing it to you, Yazan, for the short presentation, I would like to encourage our audience to actively participate by asking questions in the Q&A section and sharing their experience and engaging with our speaker. Over to you, Yazan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. I'd like, usually before we talk about solutions, especially to the challenges of food security, technological solutions, sustainability, I'd like to actually delve back into the history of agriculture in the UAE and the role that we played as an entity. So I usually start with this quote: "Give me agriculture and I'll give you civilization." This is a famous quote by the late founder of the UAE, His Highness Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan. He believed in the value of agriculture as a tool for building a civilization and rising as the nation was just formed to ensure its food security. In 1971, Sheikh Zayed was officially elected as the president of the newly formed United Arab Emirates. And immediately he set out on establishing his agenda for agriculture. One of those things was opened in 1972, so just a year later, called Mazyad Experimental Farm. So Mazyad Experimental Farm's role was to develop the technology that would make it possible to farm in the desert and to explore what crops are possible. My father, engineer Yahya Al Kodmani, joined Mazyad Experimental Farm in 1976 as an agriculture engineer. And you can see some of this. So this is in the desert of Al Ain, growing watermelons, tomatoes, and multiple crops. From there, he was successful in growing wheat as a trial. And Sheikh Zayed was establishing Al Oha wheat farm. So this was the first wheat farm in the UAE in the 1970s, in the late 1970s. And my father joined as a young engineer to become the project manager here. Of course, the scale was very large, so larger than most farming projects we have here today. And they set out to grow wheat in the desert, and they were very successful. But the issues came about in terms of sustainability. So the inputs, and especially water and soil, had to come. So soil had to come from abroad and water had to come from ground reserves. And those became depleted very fast. Moving forward, Sheikh Zayed continued on his journey in pushing agriculture as an important industry in the UAE, till we reached about 30,000 farms today operating in the country. Unfortunately, with those 30,000 farms, a lot of the inputs, especially in terms of fertilizers, was being brought in as untreated soil. So it brought with it some environmental challenges in terms of invasive species and caused ecological damage. So in 1995, Emirates Biofertilizer Factory was established. The task was to heat treat the fertilizers coming in to make them suitable to be used. And today it operates as the largest organic fertilizer factory in the region. At this point, we use all the inputs locally. So as the chicken farms, the poultry farms, the dairy farms started to get established, now we have our own resources, our plant waste. So we use that in the circularity of the agriculture industry here in the UAE. That was a bit about the history. Now I want to talk about the challenges. 80% of food is imported into the UAE. This is, of course, something that we hear often. Immediately, the assumption is that we don't produce it. So I'd like to challenge just a bit on that assumption. One of the main reasons we import is also cost. So regardless if we can produce all the poultry we need, all the eggs we need, all the cucumber, all the tomato, we cannot compete on cost. The UAE has an open trade policy. Of course, it's a trading hub between the West, the East, and Africa, and Asia. So you end up with a lot of products coming in, and agriculture is subsidized around the world. So it's not a level playing field. So when products are coming in and you can't compete on cost, that is one of the reasons why we might be importing. Second reason could be globalization. So today we are in the UAE over 180 nationalities. Many people want products from back home. If you're from Philippines, India, Spain, Lebanon, you want to see the products from your own country. And supermarkets are going to always keep shelf space for that. It doesn't matter how much tomatoes we grow, Spanish tomatoes and Netherlands and others will always have a place on the shelves. Also menus. So our menus, if you look around the world, are standardized at this point. But our construction industry is not. We don't build our houses from wood. So why is my menu looking the same as a menu in California or looking the same as somewhere in Europe? I don't think a sustainable menu is a general term. It has to be dependent on the area or the country you're in. So a sustainable menu here should be different than a sustainable menu elsewhere. But unfortunately today we're it's all almond milk, acai, avocados, and so on. This poses challenges because then if we want to look at food security, it means I need to grow these crops instead of growing the crops that we can grow sustainably in the country here. So, I like to mention these things just to encourage people to think about these challenges before we look at, okay, what technology do we really need? What does food security really mean? This is Emirates Bio Farm. So this is the part, what we are doing about it. We believe in organic, sustainable agriculture. So we work in regenerative agriculture. This has shade houses, greenhouses, and open fields. The UAE has great weather 6 months a year. We grow, of course, it's not it's multi-crop plantations. And we talk about soil, biodiversity. I like this picture because it's showing, the natural environment as well as production happening at the same time. We do ecotourism, where we welcome over 1,000 guests a week to educate them on local agriculture and to show them what a local menu could look like, because we have a restaurant, and the restaurant isn't just vegetarian, it's built on the farm. So if we don't have broccoli, then we're not serving broccoli. It's depending on our own production. It helps us reduce our food waste. We're pickling, we're jamming, we're dehydrating. So we're trying to show, okay, what does a sustainable menu look like in a country like this? Of course, people appreciate and change their mindset when they come out and they get to harvest by themselves. They get to harvest with the children on the farm. This image is just to show that we're continuing on the same path of environment protection, food security in the country, and there's a lot to be done. We're still at the beginning. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this journey, if I may say. So my question is, you've mentioned about the production, but then you moved to consumption, on the importance of how citizens should be responsible, but also, besides acting responsibly, but also in a sustainable manner, thus the impact on sustainable consumption. So let's start first with sustainable consumption. What are some practices that citizens should do to ensure that they are actually consuming in a sustainable manner, but also to ensure food security in the long run?
So in terms of like what consumer can do, obviously looking at local production, we're very fortunate here in the UAE. There's a strong approach towards sustainability in terms of food sourcing. So there's a big push to buying local, supporting local, and people are now able to find more and more local. It's up to them to choose the product, because there are also, like I said, because of the cost challenges, it's not the cheapest sometimes. There's seasonality around it. So watermelon's available in certain times of the year, okra is available in certain times and not others. So if we're gonna eat sustainably, we need to actually follow the seasonality, and we need to support local as much as possible.
Perfect. So this would take me about the role of data, and analytics that they play in the food tech. Um, can you leverage data and analytics to optimize, these processes that you've mentioned, be it in terms of production, but also for citizens to be better informed about the seasonality and so on?
Correct. I think now today with technology, we're going to have a big shift. Actually, this is not a topic that many like to talk about, but food fraud is rife in fish, in olive oil, in organic, in so much. And we can't assume that local won't face the same challenges, that people will import and label it as local because the consumer wants it to be local. So now having this traceability, the blockchain technologies, having these Agtech startups that are being set up to ensure that there's traceability and empowering the consumer to know where his food is coming from. So we have some companies working in the aquaculture sector that are doing very well, showing consumers. I know that Carrefour is setting up a traceability program, as well as the ministry is supporting a traceability program. So these are extremely important to show the reality. It's just, I hope it's a reality we want to see. It's sometimes it's going to make us face some tough decisions.
Yeah. So when speaking about decisions, and the role of government, which is very important in this scope, what irregularity frameworks or policies you expect as as a farmer or working in this field from the government to ensure food security in the future?
Well, the government, we are very fortunate to be in a country that had a minister of food security, and today she is Her Excellency Mariam Meheri is the Minister of Climate Change and Environment. So food security has already is a big part of the role and something that she supports strongly. We're very fortunate that you have national food security dialogue happening between the Emirates and most municipalities and most government entities are trying to be a part of this program. Food security, of course, means that not only do we grow the product, but can we source it from multiple sources? Can we own land abroad? Can we reduce the waste of what we already bring in, increase the efficiency of the food that's already here? So it has many different aspects to it. So the government also has multiple different goals. So being a country that wants to stay open to trade and become a trade hub with DP World and others, we're not expecting to have, like Eurozone would have quotas on what's allowed to be imported. And many countries do that as well. We're not expecting that. But we're hoping to be on the marketing side, which is what's being done. So to push the demand. Instead of controlling the supply, it's to push the demand for local and protecting local.
So better promotion, you mean?
Yes, better promotion. Of course, they are doing a lot of promotion, but ensuring that what's labeled local is local, protecting that brand and building on that brand, especially with the culinary scene. I feel like the culinary scene wants to do something, but it's still missing. Why don't we have a menu that's built on, okay, this is a Dubai breakfast or a UAE breakfast or a Fujairah lunch, and it includes oysters from Dubai Fujairah and mushrooms from Abu Dhabi and all these different products from fish to camel milk to dates that are incorporated into these menus that we push on a national level. These would be great. Yeah.
Perfect. So I have two questions from the audience. I'll take the first one. We see that farmers, as part of the labor market are not perfectly, the mobility of farmers is not perfect. It's quite hard for them to move from their country to another country and to so. So we have a question from Raouf who's asking, what can we do to encourage farmers, to leave their country, move to another country, to establish it based on best practices, given, there's the established fertilized land and water?
Yeah, this is, one of the big challenges, especially here. Let's talk about Agtech. So let's say an Agtech provider comes into the country or a startup. they would be going into, let's say, an accelerator. An accelerator today is really built mostly on e-commerce tech, but it's office-based. Meanwhile, I think agriculture accelerator needs to be a completely different thing. It needs land, it needs water, it needs the inputs, and you can't really do that from traditional accelerators. So in the UAE, we have Food Tech Valley coming up in Dubai that's really built to, especially when it comes to Agtech, to provide that to Agtech companies to be able to come and set up and establish and experiment and research and development and do research and development. In Sharjah, you have SRTP, I believe Sharjah Research and Technology Park, which has a lot to do with, is giving people the support they need. I know Masdar in Abu Dhabi has also given people, you have Kizad that's very important, interested now in agriculture. You have a DAFSA in Abu Dhabi Food Security Authority or Food Safety and Agriculture Authority. They have a lot of programs to support startups coming in and getting the land they need. For our part, we have 100 hectares. I'm farming 25. So today I'm actually in talks with a lot of Agtech or startups that want space to set up where we can provide them that land, water, electricity, and already we have an ecosystem where we are supplying the market, doing the distribution. So we already have some partnerships in that sense.
Yeah, but what's the status of Agtech in the region? Not only in the UAE. I think this is an exemplary, practice for the region, but also maybe globally. But what's the status of Agtech maybe in the region, the Arab region, but also globally? What are some future trends? How can our audience, if they're interested in this, field, find more information and guidance on that?
I think due to the support that I just mentioned before, humbly, I would say the UAE is about 10 years ahead in terms of Agtech and also in terms of arid climate agriculture here and using technology. So we have some of the biggest vertical farms established here, some of the biggest research vertical farms established here, aquaculture, fish farming, mushrooms, indoor mushrooms, and so much more that has helped us establish projects where now, unfortunately, I'd like to say something that, like I said, we don't build our houses here from wood because we don't have wood. It's the same for the technology. If I don't have a requirement I don't have a lack of sunlight, let's say, do I need LED lights? These are questions, so the technology needs to be built on problems that we have here. And today, that's what's happening. The technology has been brought in over the past 5 to 10 years. A lot has been done where a lot of learnings, failures, new projects are being established that are built on our challenges. So I think what's coming is great and is going to be translated to better projects in the region as well.
Perfect. So we have two questions that are quite similar. What's the future of artificial intelligence, but also biotechnology in farming, food security, agriculture? Yes.
I think in terms of data collection, as soon as we have the data, we have the traceability. Farmers are using more data on the farm itself. I have to admit, I'm still on Excel, but I mean, I see software coming up day in and day out, which helps with the entire farming process. Once, if you're trying to look 10, 20 years down the line, and most farmers have, or many farmers have shifted to these systems, you're going to end up with a huge database where AI will be used to optimize, build, plan better. One of our big challenges is matching supply and demand, growing what the market needs and understanding the costs, accurately understanding the challenges. So can you imagine an AI that's linked to the weather networks, the weather patterns, that knows the entire country, what everybody's doing, and that can optimize and give you advice on what crop to grow and when to harvest and things of that nature.
Perfect. We have another question in light of all the, disruptions, wars, economic disruptions, social inequalities, and so on. How could we ensure that food security is not, a tool for war?
Yeah.
And how we could ensure it's not disrupted,
Yeah, so these are questions, of course, this is a national security issue. many countries would keep a national stockpile to last you, let's say, 3 to 6 months. And then after that, you would rely on your own production or to reestablish trade routes. You know, realistically speaking, if you're looking at the world as a whole, maybe what I'm doing in the desert would be completely unsustainable.
Yeah.
But the idea is that if I need food security, I need to farm, then okay, this is the most sustainable option. But and this is the risk. This is why every country is looking at its own national food security as a basic need, regardless whether it's possible or not. And that's where Agtech comes in, to be able to actually, okay, we need to produce, we have these challenges, how can we do it sustainably? So that's where Agtech is going to play the biggest role.
Yeah, so this answers, I think, the question. And how do you see the future of food tech unfolding? Yeah.
Yeah, I think we might, so let's say vertical farming. Vertical farming plays an important role, especially in the UAE. It saves water and it provides year-round. But it has technical challenges in terms of the types of crops that can be grown and the costs associated with it, especially on the energy side and the capital expenditure.
Yeah.
So we might have to revisit conventional open field agriculture, because if we are talking about food security, then we need all different approaches.
Yeah.
The high-tech indoor as well as the outdoor, because we're not going to get rid of, you know, the 20% date palms that we have here in the UAE. So we need solutions for these things. For the date palm industry, we need Agtech solutions. For the camel industry, let's say, we need for the poultry industry, for eggs, meat, all of these, and open field farming. And you get that with AI data capture, sensors, and you have now using drones as well. So we're going to definitely be looking at the Agtech on the open field side much more.
Perfect. So we have some questions on the adaptability of food systems to the climate change.
Yeah.
So can the food, food systems, our food systems or ecosystems adapt to the climate change? What could be done? How we could, move from these challenges into some opportunities and so on.
Yeah. You know, this is a huge challenge. Of course, agriculture is a huge industry. We say agriculture, but lettuce farming has nothing to do with trees, has nothing to do with aquaculture and animal. But of course, we have a huge risk with climate change, and it's a serious risk. We have here the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture, ICBA, and of course you have ICARDA and others that are tasked with identifying, especially with ICBA, biosaline agriculture. So producing using first land that would be considered marginalized, so it's already not counted as productive land, and using water that would usually not be used in agriculture. So if we're able to unlock these, this is kind of mitigating for the future. So they came up with, and they promote the use of salicornia, which is a crop that's growing in high salinity environments, and also switching from some grains to quinoa and millets. So quinoa, instead of rice, has high nutrition content. It's heat tolerant, drought tolerant, and salinity, it can handle higher salinity. As well, it's the same with millets. These things are way more tolerant and are more nutritious. So for Africa and the Middle East especially, this is the main agenda, how to change to crops that would be tolerant. And I think in the future, many of the areas will be challenged with the same problems, they're going to have a lot of learnings from this region. Yeah.
So there's a comment in the Q&A with challenging the point that you've mentioned, that let's work on demand, right? So, but don't you think that supply could drive the demand actually? So if this is available, then you can consume it. If not, then you cannot consume it. What do you think of driving demand through supply? But rational supply, just not like it's available, yes or no, but based on a clear strategy, national strategies, maybe also regional strategies on what crops are available, what's currently available, and then this would drive the demand, and not the demand would drive not to fall in the problems that you have mentioned, the fraud in food, or maybe producing out of season and so on?
So that's the approach we're currently going with, that we supply. But knowing the challenges that farmers are facing, the reality is not that simple. Our cost structures, so people assume because you're not shipping it, that the cost would be less. In reality, I don't think most in the HoReCa industry, so hotel retailers catering, are using even local eggs, even a single local egg. That's all import. Because we will never compete on cost structures in Brazil, let's say, or Turkey, where the feed is available right there, the land is available, the farmer is working on the farm. So we're always going to be more expensive. So on the retail side, where the consumer is choosing, local has a huge role. But in the HoReCa side, where the consumer doesn't know where the egg is coming from, it's all import. So ensuring that the consumer is demanding more local on the menus, ensuring that they're demanding more local on the shelves would help the retailers and the buyers in HoReCa pay that premium because it's demanded. Right now, they just look at it as a cost. So this egg and this egg, this one's more expensive, I'll buy the cheaper one. It's purely, that's the current equation. So to get people to pay more, unfortunately, local is going to cost more. This is,
Yeah. So we have a question from Ali. Is asking if the new technologies, albeit their high cost, and capital needed to acquire them, did it ensure food security in the Arab region and possibly avoid dependency on other countries?
So the question is the high capex?
No, he's just wondering if these investments in technology when it comes to agriculture would ensure food security and possibly avoid dependency on other countries and production in other countries.
It's a tough question to answer. It's today, like I said, a lot of the projects have been set up. What that gave us is the learnings. I wouldn't say that today, right now, we are there, but I think it's going to direct the capital expenditure and the investments very fast. So what's great about this nation, this country, is the fast learning and the adaptability. So a lot of these projects were set up. There's a lot of learnings that
Yeah, hi. So we're back. We're sorry for that. We're back with Yazan. Yazan, so you were telling us about the technologies and the cost and return on investment.
in summary, we still have a lot to do, but the investment in the projects that has been done was part of the process. So, but we still have a lot to do.
Yeah, so we have another question on small and conventional farmers. How could they adopt to such technologies? How they will be included in these sustainable strategies?
Yes. So of course they make the backbone. So when I mentioned 30,000 farms, those are smallholder farms, small and medium-sized farms, but and they play a key role, a very important role. In Abu Dhabi, for example, we have Silal, who's tasked with, I think they manage a large portion of these farms, and they are investing in upgrading their technology and their know-how and supporting them in distribution. So yes, of course, smallholder farms. But the reality is, if you talk about, like, let's say, high-tech, capital intensive, they cannot afford it. In my personal opinion, and of course, this is not the same across the world, organic has played a very important role. I saw it happen in India, and I saw it happen in Africa, in some countries and some nations that are actually among the poorest, but what happened is one entity would get the organic certification for, let's say, 100 farmers, 200 farmers. That allowed them to stand out in terms of marketing, selling, access new markets abroad. There's big demand for organic. It's 15% growth year over year. As you can see on our supermarket shelves, before it used to be a small section, and today it's entire rows. So this all has to come from farmers. Organic is using, so with these...
Does it happen naturally? This collusion, should it happen naturally, or it should be regulated in a way or another?
Organic is a regulated term. There's certifying bodies. The big cost in it is, if you are a conventional farm it's going to be costly. But these smallhold, very traditional rural farms actually find it easy to convert because most of their practices are organic. They are collecting seeds, they're using animal manures. So to them, the cost is not as high. They just need somebody with the sophistication to help them get that certified, tested, and when the cost is distributed across multiple farmers, they're able to do this. So as I said, our challenges are a lot, so we need a multi-pronged approach. So whether high-tech, high quality, open field, large scale, using data and all that, or organic for these smallholder farms, I think we need all the solutions that we have that are considered sustainable and can empower the farmers to get a better price and a better product.
Perfect. So you spoke about construction and how it's linked to, agriculture and food security. So I have a question here. Are there any innovative materials or building techniques inspired by food tech that are being utilized in the construction industry?
I'm not the expert on that. I've heard so in the mushroom industry, you call the mushroom spores or mycelia. I know people are making packaging and construction materials out of mycelia. So you give it organic waste and the mycelia grows into a block and you can use that as far as my understanding. But I haven't seen any Agtech technology specifically related to the construction industry.
Yeah. So we have a question from Nawal from Morocco. She's asking about, these projects that you've mentioned and investments. Are they short-term, long-term? How to ensure that these short-term investments are also sustainable, but will be also profitable in the long run?
No, most of these projects are large scale. The investments that were done here in the country, of course, they have a long-term outlook. Agriculture is low margins, difficult industry, so it's not looking at it, even if we added the term tech to it, Agtech, but it's still, at the end of the day, you're selling vegetables. So the terms of returns, it's always a very long-term outlook. And like I said, the benefit of these projects is creating that foothold, creating the learnings. So hopefully we can expand on them and reach a point where they are extremely financially sustainable and more investments come in that.
Perfect. I have an interesting question relating, the food tech, agriculture, and education. So how can food tech be integrated into educational curricula to enhance learning experiences and promote, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics education, the STEM education?
Many schools here. So we have, I believe the last figure was 800 schools have installed some form of agriculture, schools and government entities and different bodies and private sector. But the aim is to have these inside schools, inside educational institutes, so that people can see, because as soon as you start using these products, you start understanding the challenges, the productivity, how does it work and whatnot. So I see them being done in schools quite a bit already. And for us on our, we receive 1,000 guests a week. Many of those are school students, educational institutes. So coming out and seeing farming for themselves, hopefully inspires them to look at what we're doing and also want to be in this industry in the future.
Perfect. I think we have another question from Rabah as well relating to this point on the staff working in agriculture and the skills needed for them to move and to ensure that these technology are maximized and used in the best way possible. So what should be done also to support these farmers, but also those who work in agriculture, especially the field workers?
There is also some program or people, you talk about it, vocational training. So here in this region, all of us go for higher education, 4-year university degrees, masters, and so on. I think there's a gap for vocational training, especially in agriculture, for people to develop these skills and become, a hydroponic technician, organic soil technician, pest control technician, horticulture, whatever it is, but on a certification level, on a 1-year, 2-year program level. And this is how it is in Holland, one of the biggest agriculture nations in the world, they have a lot of vocational training. So we have that gap missing. And here, to be honest, we work on the expats living here coming in. Currently, the system for agriculture is just the same for any office, but agriculture is seasonal. So looking at getting seasonality visas for agriculture would be very helpful for the industry for sure. It's something that I feel could be developed.
Perfect.
To allow the free movement of of farmers, so that they're able, you're maximizing. So if he's off in the winter, let's say in Europe, if we want to talk in more northern countries, they stop farming in November because frost is coming in, and then winter, and then they start in March, April. It's the complete flip to us. We start in November. He stopped in November. We start in November, and we end in April. He starts in April. So somebody that can farm in both would be very beneficial. Go to his home country in harvest season, come here in harvest season in the winter. And you have this free movement in the European zone and other economic zones in North America and so on. So we need that here.
So again, food security is also highly contingent on economic policies, national strategies, and so on. And I think we should look further into our regional integration, not only from an economic perspective, but also from food security, workforce, agriculture, because this is a very important point, that farmers should also be seen as qualified, impactful, active agents of the labor force, and should be also supporting other countries, because certainly this will have a spillover on the economy of the country. So before we conclude, what are your final messages? What are some future trends? What are we expecting in the near future? I know I'm just going to ask about the future in general, but in the near futures, what are some trends and tips that you can provide to our audience? Because I can tell from the questions that we have received, many of them are technical and some of them are actually farmers.
Okay. I think regenerative agriculture is taking up a big topic now, especially I think there's a trend that's going to be very important, which is the carbon credits. As soon as there's carbon accounting, I think a lot of farmland would be able to make use of that, be able to make use of sustainable agriculture and have multiple revenue sources, especially with the carbon credits. Of course, AI is impacting everything. So I don't know what ChatGPT is going to do for agriculture, but I'm sure we're going to see some changes in the next 5 years. Mushrooms is a big trend, I believe, in terms of health, productivity, and the recycling of waste is another big one, where countries are now looking at its waste streams, and especially its organic waste streams, as one of the big emitters of methane and greenhouse gases. So when they're looking to divert it, if you look at biomimicry, how to break down this waste, we're going to look at insects. In nature, insects do that first job, and then fungus do that job, and bacteria. So with fungus, we're able to produce mushrooms. With insects, we're able to produce animal feed. So we have a startup here in Abu Dhabi that takes food waste and grows black soldier fly insects. They're currently operating on our farm as well. And then the larva that comes out, you feed it to the chickens and to the fish. So that creates circularity. It creates a value added from the waste. And the UAE, as a country that imports all this food, we would do a great service to use that waste and create a resource here. In terms of mushrooms, traditionally also we're importing all the substrate. So creating substrate locally, there's a startup in Abu Dhabi also. So the first one is called Circa Biotech. The second one now is called Bio Farm. So they're looking at taking palm date waste. So not the waste that's in other mushroom producing nations, our waste, and developing the mushroom spawn that would produce on this waste. Because if you bring the spawn from abroad, it was trained or developed on their waste. So we need it to be on our waste. So they're working on this challenge. So mushrooms, insects, and carbon credits. I think that's a big future, especially in terms of sustainable agriculture.
Perfect. Very last question. It's going to be very short.
Sure.
With or against self-dependency in food
with or against what?
Food self-dependency in agriculture.
Unfortunately, the world is a very fragile, scary place. So yes, because when you look at your children, you have to feed them. During COVID, you saw people panicking. So nobody is going to be against, especially after we went through with COVID. I think it opened people's eyes to, I don't need anything really other than my doctor and some food. So, food dependency is very important.
Thank you so much, Yazan, and thank you so much for our audience for their engagement. We had, hundreds of questions. We tried to ask you as many as possible. Thank you so much, Yazan.
Thank you. Thank you
And
for having me.
for our dear audience, tomorrow we'll be in the fourth session with Jérôme Verissel, the General Manager of Recap Viola Middle East, discussing recycling and how to move from trash to value and unleashing the power of recycling. See you tomorrow. Bye.